He said the Singularity talk is garbage. He said Nvidia is no longer a technology company. He said Anthropic wants to go public at $2 trillion. Vague claims, so we pulled the receipts on every one of them. This is MeshCast. Let's check the tape. The setup. Eli the Computer Guy, sitting in with Will Guyot on the Tech Report. His thesis is simple. There are two artificial intelligences. There's the technology stack, neural networks, vector databases, semantic search, real engineering that solves real problems. And then there's the word artificial intelligence, which he says is just a story in people's heads, borrowed from Terminator in 2001. That part is opinion, and we're not fact-checking opinion. But underneath the opinion, he makes about a dozen checkable factual claims. Those we can verify. Here they are, one at a time. Claim 1. He says he was just at a conference called AI4, where technology professionals told him their CEOs had AI budgets with no idea what to actually deploy. The conference is real, and the timing works. AI4 2026 ran August 4th to 6th at the Venetian in Las Vegas, roughly 2 weeks before this interview. 12,000 plus attendees, 1,000 speakers, 400 exhibitors. It bills itself as America's largest applied AI conference. The hallway anecdote itself is unverifiable. It's a story from a run group. But is it plausible? That's where it gets interesting. Because MIT put a number on exactly that pattern. Their report, The Gen AI Divide, State of AI in Business, found 95% of enterprise generative AI pilots produced zero measurable return on the profit and loss statement. Not zero usefulness, zero measurable financial impact. That was drawn from 300 public deployments, 150 executive interviews, and $30 to $40 billion of enterprise pilot spending. The researchers blamed integration and workflow, not model quality. So the anecdote can't be verified, but the phenomenon behind it absolutely can. Claim 2. Eli says Jensen Huang would spend $150,000 a year on tokens for a single engineer. The real number is bigger. On the All In podcast, filmed on the last day of Nvidia's GTC 2026, Huang said that if a $500,000 engineer did not consume at least $250,000 worth of tokens, he would be, quote, deeply alarmed. If that person spent $5,000, he said he'd go on stage at GTC. He pitched giving engineers roughly half their base pay again in tokens, and called it a Silicon Valley recruiting tool. Asked if Nvidia was spending $2 billion a year on tokens for its own engineers, Huang answered, "We're trying to." So the claim is directionally correct, and, if anything, too generous to Jensen. Claim 3. The conflict of interest point. Does Jensen Huang run a $5 trillion company that sells GPUs? Yes. Nvidia's market capitalization hit $5.26 trillion on April 27, 2026, the highest close in the history of publicly traded companies, ahead of Alphabet around $4.2 trillion and Apple around $3.9 trillion. Revenue that quarter came in around $68 billion, up 73% year over year. So when the man selling the shovels tells you to buy more shovels, Eli's framing is fair, and the number is accurate. Claim 4. Eli says Evan Spiegel used a staff memo to justify laying off 16% of the company, and then warned about an AI backlash. Both halves are true, but they're two different moments. On April 15, 2026, Snap cut around 1,000 people, 16% of its workforce, plus more than 300 open roles. The memo filed with the SEC cited, quote, rapid advancements in artificial intelligence that enable our teams to reduce repetitive work. The company told investors it would save over $500 million a year, and the stock jumped about 7% on the news. Then, roughly 2 weeks later, on Lenny's podcast, Spiegel warned that technology leaders are massively underestimating human comfort with AI, and predicted a huge amount of societal pushback. Same CEO, same month, two audiences, which is exactly the argument Eli makes next. Claim 5. AI washing. Eli says companies blame layoffs on AI when the real cause is overhiring in a soft economy. This is opinion, but there's hard evidence behind it. TechCrunch has been keeping a running list. More than 20 tech companies cited AI as a factor in 2026 job cuts, and a Financial Times analysis found that companies blaming AI for cuts underperformed the Nasdaq by almost 10% over the 30 trading days after the announcement. In other words, the market doesn't fully buy the story either. Sam Altman himself has used the phrase AI washing for cost-cutting dressed up as innovation. And at Snap specifically, the layoffs came weeks after the activist investor Arnik Capital wrote to Spiegel demanding he cut 1,000 jobs. The AI framing came after the pressure. Verdict: supported. Claim 6. Demi's Hassabis and the foothills. Verify. Closing the Google I.O. keynote on May 19, 2026, the DeepMind chief executive said, "When we look back at this time, I think we will realize that we were standing in the foothills of the Singularity." It drew audible gasps in the room, and it was clipped across the internet within the hour. One piece of context Eli leaves out. Hassabis uses singularity more narrowly than the science fiction definition. For him, it's roughly the arrival of full AGI, which he puts at around a 50% chance by 2030. He is not predicting a machine that rewrites itself overnight. The quote is real. The meaning is narrower than the headline. Claim 7. Zuckerberg also verified. On July 2, 2026, in an internal town hall recorded and reported by Reuters, Mark Zuckerberg told employees that the trajectory of agentic development over at least the last 4 months hasn't really accelerated in the way that we expected. He admitted the reorganization, which laid off around 10% of Meta's workforce and moved 7,000 people onto AI teams, was not as clean as it could have been, and that the bets haven't come to fruition yet. Meanwhile, Meta is projected to spend as much as $145 billion on AI infrastructure this year. Eli says the two statements were a couple of weeks apart. It was closer to 6 weeks, May 19th to July 2nd. Small correction, the substance holds. Foothills of the Singularity in May. Agents are behind schedule in July. Claim 8, and this is the one worth slowing down for. Eli says Anthropic wants to IPO at $2 trillion. Here's the precise version. On August 13th, 2026, the Financial Times reported that 6 of Anthropic's own backers expect the company to float in October at $2 trillion or more, which would be the largest initial public offering in history. Anthropic filed confidentially with the SEC on June 1st. Its last private valuation was $965 billion. CNBC reported its annualized revenue run rate hit $65 billion in July, up 7-fold in a year. But, and this matters, the reporting explicitly says senior Anthropic executives have not settled on a valuation, even privately. So it is investors and bankers who want $2 trillion. Not a number the company has announced. Eli's version puts the words in Anthropic's mouth. The market expectation is real. The corporate demand is not confirmed. Claim 9. The CNBC article exists and it is fresh. The headline is Nvidia's AI moat is shifting from chips to capital by Ari Levy, published August 18th, 2026, the same day this interview went up. What it describes: a memorandum of understanding with Goldman Sachs, Apollo, Blackstone, and BlackRock to pursue $500 billion of third-party financing for Nvidia GPUs, with Nvidia holding the option to backstop 25% of every loan, up to $105 billion committed to an open AI data center in Pike County, Ohio, and $30.2 billion in marketable equity securities, up from $12.9 billion a year earlier. Huang's own words: frontier labs are growing faster than their balance sheets and credit profiles can support. Where Eli overreaches is the next sentence, that Nvidia is no longer a technology company. CNBC says shifting, not replaced. Their data center networking business alone grew almost 200% year over year. Verdict: real article, accurate direction, slightly hotter paraphrase. Claim 10. The one French guy. Eli couldn't quite place the name. It's Yann LeCun, Turing Award winner, Meta's chief AI scientist for 12 years, who left in November 2025 after disagreeing with the company's direction. He has said publicly that large language models are a dead end for real intelligence, describing them as mostly information retrieval systems. His new venture, AMI Labs, raised $1.03 billion in seed funding at a $3.5 billion valuation, with backers reportedly including Nvidia and Jeff Bezos, to build world models, systems that understand physical space, hold persistent memory, and plan. So LeCun is real and the bet is real. Where the claim breaks down is the word only. World models, robotics foundation models, and neurosymbolic research are a whole field, not one man. The concentration risk Eli is pointing at is genuine. The count of one is rhetoric. Half true. Claim 11, and this is the most precise thing he says all interview. Google is putting a model into Android through AI Core, that's Gemini Nano, with Nano 4 already in developer preview, claiming 4 times faster inference. Google shipped Gemini Nano into Chrome in January 2026 to run scan detection locally on the device. And the downloadable laptop model. On June 3, 2026, Google released Gemma 412B, explicitly designed to run on any laptop with 16 gigabytes of RAM or VRAM, about 18 gigabytes of weights, down to roughly 8 gigs at 4-bit quantization, Apache 2.0 licensed free. 16 gigs of RAM. He got the exact number right. Verified, and it's the strongest part of his argument. If the capability is becoming free and local, what exactly are the trillion-dollar valuations pricing in? Claim 12. The historical one. Eli argues that after the dot-com bust, companies didn't just stop overinvesting. They underinvested for years, and that's the real danger this time. The record backs him. A San Francisco Federal Reserve review found real United States information technology investment fell 10.7% in 2001. Telecom's IT spending alone dropped about $22 billion in a single year, more than two-thirds of the entire national decline. Competitive local carriers cut capital spending by nearly 80% from their 2000 peak, and the physical evidence is still in the ground. Roughly 85% of the fiber laid in the late 90s was still dark by the mid-2000s. Analyst forecasts at the time had wireline capital spending in 2006 still sitting below 2002 levels. The hangover really did last year's supported. So here's the scoreboard. On the checkable facts, Eli the Computer Guy is running a strong record. The AI4 conference, verified. Nvidia at 5 trillion, verified. Snap's 16%, verified. Hassabis and the foothills, verified. Zuckerberg's agent admission, verified. Google's 16GB local model, verified to the number. The dot-com underinvestment hangover, supported by Federal Reserve data. Where he drifts is in the compression. The Jensen token figure was understated. Anthropic's 2 trillion is what investors expect, not what the company has demanded. CNBC said Nvidia's moat is shifting to capital of Meta. Nvidia stopped being a technology company. And Lecon is not the only person taking a different path. Every one of those is an overstatement in the same direction, which is worth noticing. Which leaves the one thing nobody can fact-check. He says we are past the point where this is recoverable, and that when it ends we go into a technology dark age rather than a golden one. That is a prediction, not a fact, and predictions don't get a verdict. But notice what his own evidence actually supports. 95% of pilots returning nothing. A chipmaker underwriting its customers' loans. A frontier lab admitting agents stalled. And a capable model that runs free on a 16GB laptop. The technology is real. Whether the businesses are worth trillions is a completely separate question, and that distinction is the most honest thing said in the entire interview. This has been MeshCast. Claims checked. Sources shown. If you want the next one, subscribe.